Welcome to the first episode of Preston Threads right here in the heart of Preston at the Mandala Yoga Centre. In this very first episode, we have got some wonderful guests. And for these wonderful guests, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Councillor Matthew Brown. I'm leader of Preston City Council.
Hi, I'm Lowther-Wright. I'm from Mandala Yoga Studio, which is a worker-owned cooperative.
Hi, I'm Michael Conlon. I'm the chairman of Conlon Construction, an employee-owned business.
What an absolute pleasure to have you all. Welcome to Preston Threads podcast. If I may, I'd like to start off with you, Councillor Matthew. What does it mean to be a Prestonian in 2025?
I think it's a very exciting time to be a Prestonian. I think the community is very strong. I think we all work together pretty well as a community, but there's lots of exciting things happening. If you look at the city centre, it's very different from what we had, say, a decade ago. But also, I think the purpose of this amazing podcast is just to really educate people and get them involved in what we're doing, because it's probably very different to many other cities across the country. And the focus on community wealth building is a thing that we've been doing for some time. But for us to change people's lives to the degree that we do want, we need to get people to understand what we're doing and actually join the process. This is Preston people's city. It's their city. People are not always aware what is happening. So I think this will say what the council's doing, but not just the council with many partners and what they're involved in and some of the projects that are taking place, but also the change that's happening and the dedicated people we have in our communities are actually trying to bring about that change. And the more people we have to actually work with us to deliver change, the better it's going to be.
That's so interesting. And you've just following on from what you've actually said, you know, there's lots of change. There's so many opportunities. Even me as a Prestonian, when I look at Preston, I think there's so much happening. There's a buzz in the atmosphere. With everything that's happening, how does it influence our Preston residents? How does these changes shape their future, shape their present, if you will? And what can they do to make, what will the city do to make their future that much more brighter?
I think it's a brilliant question. Just look around you in the city centre. We see many jobs being created. We see local businesses that are participating in the process. You've seen local people involved in it. And also, we're trying to look at very different ways of doing business. So today we're in a worker cooperative. It's an amazing business. It's a women-led organisation. And my understanding is that the minimum wage is £17 an hour. We just want to see a lot more of this because Preston has had for decades suffered lots of inequalities. We've suffered deindustrialisation. And we've just got a council here with its partners that are trying to change that. And for us to actually have the success we want, people need to understand what we're doing and be a little inspired by it, but take part in it and make the movement grow.
In very simple terms, what is the Preston Model?
Well, the Preston Model, it's a concept known as community wealth building. So we've been doing it for about a decade, really. And it's basically saying we want to have a Preston economy here that it actually benefits people a lot more, is owned a lot more by the community. So it's about the council buying local, the council promoting a living wage, us working with partners to set up our own bank across the region, which we are doing, using our land and assets to benefit people by building more affordable housing, for example, and trying to grow the amount of businesses that are like Emma's and Michael's in Preston, because we feel that's good for people in our community. It's very much an exciting community wealth building movement. It's basically saying the way that we've done things for a long time is not working. We've got to try doing things very differently. And it's about what the principles I said, trying to have a more shared economy which is owned by people and is more democratic, so they have more control over their working lives and lives as human beings, really. That's what it's about. But, I'm under no illusion of the challenges we face. It's a lot of this is tough work. You've got to really rip up the existing rule book and write another one and persuade people to get behind it. And I think this is why this podcast is really amazing because, for this to work at the scale we want and for us to actually deepen this, we need people to understand what it is and get behind it too.
And there's so much good that comes out of the Preston models. And I'm wondering, why would you need to persuade people to get behind it?
I think we do need to persuade people, because I just think we've kind of like done things in a way that doesn't benefit people too much for a very long time in this country. You know, I was born in the 70s, obviously we had Thatcherism that came from that period, and I think there's still a big echo of that in our communities. So, you know, people are not used to doing things in a different way or being told they can do things in a different way. And I think this is why we need to really try and get into communities and work with them to do things differently. And once we have your local council, community organisations, local businesses, some of the big institutions here behind this to a varying degrees, this is where it gets into an exciting stage of transformation.
And you just mentioned challenges. Can you see why someone might not kind of invest in the Preston model or not believe in it? Have you thought about that, or what do you think they are? What do you think the reasons are for people not investing in the Preston model?
Well, I think people just have very busy lives day to day. Sometimes people are struggling to get by, and obviously they're not going to be thinking about what happens in Preston's economy. But I do think, you know, we need to try and persuade more people that it is important, because people are often part of a community organisation or a religious organisation that we work with, or they might be a member of a trade union, or they might have a family-owned business. You know, we need to get people behind this and just realise what we're doing is really transformative. And it's really important. But then there will be some resistance to it. I've had a little resistance from, you know, say, large corporations that might not want to see an approach like this because it doesn't benefit them, you know. So, yeah, so I think it's really trying to educate people and encourage people to be part of it, and then obviously say, you know, we're taking quite a bold step here to do things really differently.
Do you remember that moment when you thought the Preston model works? And can you describe that moment?
Yes, I mean, I think we did a study where we found out that by us buying locally, there was like 1,600 jobs created, you know, which so just spending locally with our partners. And then also there's been studies that show that I think 4,000 or 5,000 people have received the real living wage. And national statistics say that I think in the last year we delivered more affordable homes than any council in Lancashire. So it just shows that these things are working, but you know, we don't want to stop there. We want to go a lot further. Keeping
on the worker cooperative right now, you are the first. You are, if I'm right in understanding, you are one of the first ones to kind of adopt the worker cooperative strategy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and what made you want to kind of adopt this strategy in your business?
It makes complete sense from a yoga perspective. You know, if we're living in a yogic way, then this is about not taking more than you need, and about being that the health of one, you know, affects the health of all. You know, so for me, community wealth building, you can't be wealthy if you don't have health. You know, health is wealth. You know, if you are struggling with your health, you know, there may well be an impact on your financial well-being, your financial stability as well. I am, you know, I'm a socialist, you know, politically. I believe in, you know, equality of opportunity. And there are so many, Matthew sort of said, you know, it can sound abstract, but when you come somewhere here, you realise, and, you know, with your organisation as well, you realise it really isn't something abstract. That we have a building here which is funded by, you know, private members, you know, paying to come to yoga and come to events. And then the building exists, it's here all of the time. And in a traditional capitalist, you know, model, this building would just then be sitting empty, or we're trying to extract as much profit from it as possible. And that just doesn't seem to serve the community. And so what we've done is enable more, mostly women. There's one gentleman here, but we are completely women-led. There's one gentleman who benefits from our model here, to come and use the building, to set up their own organisations, their own businesses, to be freelance or to be employed here, using this asset in a way that isn't about just extracting profit. It's about sharing resources. That is really what it's about.
Coming over to you, Michael. Firstly, thank you so much for, again, joining us on Preston Threads. What made you, or why did you want to use the Preston model framework for, you know, Conlon Construction, and how that is shaped?
I've got to say, I don't want to claim that it was the Preston model. We were aware of the Preston model, and obviously Preston City Council, one of our big clients. But it was more about trying to carry on the ethos of the company. But we've not set up a cooperative. This is an employee-owned business. Along with the same ethos of the Preston model, we employed as many local contractors and local suppliers as we could. But we've always done that because it makes sense. Also, most of our supply chain are from the Preston area. I'll have to say, when we work in other cities, we'll employ people from local to that area. It makes sense because they're not travelling as far. So you're also hitting your carbon targets, which every client has these days. But you're also re-inputting the client's expenditure back into their locale. If it's Manchester City Council or a Cheshire Council or whatever, and it's the same means by which a council can say to their voters, in effect, and the people that live in their area, we are spending your taxes on the area, but also putting it back into companies and people that live here too.
I think it's so interesting again that you were talking about, that it's that keeping that money in the local economy wherever you're working. And I don't think people realise the damage that is done when so much of the wider economy and the global economy really is all about extraction and money coming out and going and being in the Cayman Islands, in the pockets of very, very few people. Instead of it circulating, money needs to circulate, it needs to be spent. And I think that's something that people don't really realise, is that when, your employees are getting those tax-free bonuses, they'll be spending that money locally, which supports more jobs.
Councillor Matthew Brown, I can see so attentively listening to both Emma and Michael. What are your thoughts? How do you see, when you see two positive examples, how do you see the worker cooperatives evolving in the future? And what does that mean for, I know you've touched on it briefly, but when our audiences are listening, our locals are listening, what does that evolving of worker cooperative look like for you?
Well, I think, obviously we've got two examples of very different ownership models here. We have a worker cooperative with Emma, which also is a social enterprise, and we have an employee-owned business from a traditional family-owned business. And, we just want to see that aspect of the Preston economy grow, because the benefits have just been said: higher wages, less wealth extraction, supporting local businesses, the participation. So you actually own the thing yourself, so you actually have more of a say because you actually own part of the business. That's just the way to do it. But I do want to praise both Emma and Michael for what they've done. But in terms of Conlon Construction, we can't not have a competitive process when we bid for our contracts. And actually, they were really competitive with the contracts. And when they actually won they did the markets, the bus station. They're now obviously doing the Harris, principal contractor there.
And the county hall.
And the county hall.
Don't
too.
forget that.
Yeah. So you can compete and be competitive as a local business that's got a very different ethos. And if you actually look at what Preston City Council's doing in terms of regeneration, you're not seeing any of these global corporate construction companies doing it, because that is where you do get, we feel, a lot of the wealth extraction. We've created a market where the likes of Michael's company has been very successful, and they become employee owned as well. And I just want to pay tribute to what Michael's done in terms of buying local, because I think the Harris project, I think 71% of what you spent was with
from Preston or PR.
Within PR postcodes, and I believe there's been 300 jobs. I know a lot of them are part-time, but 300 jobs.
And apprentice weeks were up, and we did the open days where people came along and saw what skills were being used on a Grade 1 listed building. So people were getting interested to see stone carving and see the sash windows being operated by joiners. And it brings an interest in the construction trades, which hopefully local young people will now follow. And then we'll have more local people working in the construction industry.
Is it fair to say that community wealth building Preston's USP, and is this what makes Preston stand out from not just our northern cities but all across the UK? This is a question for all three of you. So let me start off with Emma first.
Well, I'm originally from Leeds, and I've lived in Preston for about 25 years. I'm older than I think. And I would say Yes, Leeds is very blingy. It's I have family there who say that Leeds City Centre isn't for them anymore. It's all really big organisations. They're huge. That don't feel like they're for the people. The yoga studios there don't necessarily feel like they're for the people. And I'd say here in Preston that we have got so many organisations now that even if they haven't officially become cooperatives, that they really are tuned into that community wealth building vibe. We've got Mandala Yoga Studio here, we've got Conlon Construction, there's Preston Pedals, even like Choose Yard, which is a private organisation.
Yeah.
It's still really trying to support local organisations and give new young entrepreneurs an opportunity. The Ferret Music Venue Trust, again, really supporting grassroots music. Action Records, down the road, absolute legend of a guy, Gordon, supporting local organisations. I could go on and on about that. The vibe of Preston is community wealth building, and I would say that is its USP, and it's why I'm not moving back to Leeds.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what makes Preston stand out. Lovely, thank you so much. And for you, Michael, do you what is it our unique selling point, and is that what makes Preston stand out?
I lived in Preston since I was 3 months old, X years ago. But I think Preston's different to other places, and I think it's Preston wit and a reach chair, that sort of thing. But I mean, and our company want Preston to do well and to thrive because it's one of our big clients. But we want all of our clients to thrive, because if they don't thrive, guess what? They've got no money to spend on people who are suppliers to the councils. So if it makes Preston stand out and it gets Preston more wealth and more to go back into the community, so those people can spend it also within the community, then that's great. And it's one model, and if it thrives, absolutely brilliant. But I just wish them the best, basically, and I wish Preston the best, because it's a good place to live. Hence, I've lived here all my life.
It absolutely is. And for you, Councillor Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very much a unique selling point. There's been lots of interest in what we're doing, and again, this is one of the reasons why I'm doing these podcasts, really. We are doing things very differently. We want things to be done in a very fairer, more equal way across our communities, and it is a unique selling point because we really are trying to not just kind of like do things differently in a fair manner, but build resilience for our future. So by doing it this way, it means that, hopefully for years and generations to come, there's going to be that resilience. I mean, the cinema, for example, is owned by the city entirely through the council, and we're doing it that way because we want to keep that in, perpetuity for our community. It might be something else, say, in 20 or 30 years' time, but we want that asset to be there for the people of Preston. So it's very unique in the sense that we were probably the first city to do this in the UK. There's been lots of experimentation in Europe and America, but community wealth building it is unique, and we're the first city to do it.
Well, we should be very proud of that. What 3 different things, just for our listeners, would they be when we bring it back to the community wealth building framework?
I think 3 things that are very, very different is we as a council have said that we want people to have higher wages. So we encourage the living wage and more. And not just the council, we've worked with many employers in the community, like the County Council, the Police Community Gateway Association, private businesses that have done that. So there's been, I think, thousands of people that have had pay rises, especially younger people. That is something that's really important to us. So I think that's one thing that's really good. I think the fact that we're saying we want to buy local as much as we can't buy local on every opportunity, but if you look at the work that we are doing as an authority and some of our partners, you've seen local businesses like Michael's with lots of work. And then I think we're renewing the fabric of our city. I mean, if you look at the Harris that will reopen later this year, look at the Animate Cinema, you look at the Youth Zone that will open yet later this year. There's going to be a small business hub for local businesses as well around the city centre. You look what the university's done. You look at, we're working with a registered housing association to build 300 or 400 social and affordable homes. The council will take some of them as well in the next few years. That is very, very different to just getting business in at all costs, right? And again, the whole purpose of what we're trying to do as an authority is really trying to address those inequalities and give communities more of a say. Like in Emma's business, communities have more of a stake in the economy here, and they can actually benefit a lot more.
What is the actual definition of social value? What does it mean?
Well, it basically means that we as a council, we obviously buy local as much as we can, but also when we do buy local, on most of our contracts, we basically say to the person who delivers that service or delivers goods to us that they must do certain things that are going to be beneficial socially to our community. So that could be employing people from disabled people, it could be volunteering on one of our events, it could be recognising trade unions, it could be paying the living wage on the contract, those kind of things. And obviously, I think most of our big institutions, like including the university, hospital and others, do that as well. So it's not just the council doing it, it's across the public sector in Preston.
Is it more than just creating social value?
Social value is very helpful because you get more apprentices, you get a living wage in there. I know Michael's company donate and they volunteer at things. Things like
and
that.
we pay them the living wage as well. Other private businesses do that as well, but it's following the lead from councils, certainly, but also sometimes it's ethical. That's where we would come from. It's our ethos to, not that we have very many people on the living wage anyway. They get generally paid more than that because of the skills that are associated with our industry. Anything that puts back into the community, their taxes are being spent, then it's good that people can see that their taxes are being spent back in the community rather than them disappearing elsewhere.
I feel like we've done a lot of talking. Okay, it's time to add a little bit of fun and game to our podcast, Preston Threads podcast. Just a little plug there. I have some fun. I feel like they're fun questions. But before I go on to my fun questions, I do want to ask, what does success mean when, especially when the community wealth building framework is applied? What does success? How would you define success?
I would define success with people having better paid jobs, people having more jobs, people having more access to an affordable home, more people working in businesses like Emma and Michael's. That is my definition of success. And I think, if you can bring that to scale a lot more and get the council to continue buying locally with its partners and creating opportunities, I just think the more layers we put on this, these things take a very long time, but the more layers we put on this, it's going to be more successful, it's going to be more deeper embedded, and we'll basically be in charge of our own destinies a lot more around a local economic system that's a lot fairer that we're all in charge of.
Yeah, and it adds more value to our city as well.
And more value to
it. Just in 2 points, what does success look for you, especially with the community wealth building framework?
I think people thriving financially, physically, emotionally, feeling like they belong.
Thank you. And for you, Michael?
Well, from a business point of view, I'd like it to become a place where businesses can thrive and employ more people, but also a place where all the young people that do attend our universities, and not just talking about Preston, but they want to stay in Preston, be they from Preston themselves or who've come here to study, because there's places to get jobs, and they're not going off to Manchester or London or wherever, just to think that Lancashire's a nice place to live. There's businesses here, I can get a job, and I'm not having to flee this area to get myself employment. So that, to me, is an important key to the future of Preston.
And I can't believe nobody's mentioned we've got Spud Brothers. Right, in 3 words, what's the one thing you would like to see achieved by the end of 2025 that could make a real difference to our residents, to our fellow Prestonians?
3 words.
Just 3 words.
More of this.
Yeah, more of this. I like that. That's good. What for you, Emma?
Healthier, connected humans.
Oh, that's a good. You have to top that, Michael.
I think a thriving local economy.
Thriving local economy. Yeah, got that one. And what makes Preston special to you personally?
Community.
Oh, community.
The local sense of humour.
Oh yeah, how can we forget that? And
Really warm and friendly people everywhere.
they are, unless they're hungry. And finally, this podcast is, of course, called Preston Threads podcast. My definition, when I first heard the name, was, there's a historic kind of background to it, but there's a very kind of, my grandma who's from India, she said, when we talk about thread, it's about threading relationships with your community, with your local council, with your neighbour, and that's what makes a city. That's what makes our identity that much stronger. And that's why I thought the name was absolutely perfect for this podcast, because I see with the community wealth building strategy framework, what we're doing is we're using the locals and threading it all together to make them really strong connections. And I wondered what this title of our podcast finally means to you.
I think it's an amazing title. Preston Threads, obviously, our community is a working class community. It's obviously built on hard work and people, in industry and other things. And I think we've always got to recall that, because I think working people here have contributed so much. I mean, it was working people that built our parks, over a century ago in Preston. And I think we've always got to remember that heritage, and I think this podcast really in tribute to what all working people in Preston have done over the decades.
Thank you so much for joining us on our first episode of Preston Threads podcast. Coming up in our next few episodes, we're going to be discussing regeneration in the city, climate change, arts and culture, and much, much, much more. So please do stay tuned and keep enjoying Preston Threads podcast.